we have to be able to give them loans. So that was the first thing, and we have to be able to give it digitally, because if you have to scale, it has to be done digitally. Why most entrepreneurs start is because they want to solve a really, really big problem through some form of innovation.
With over 1 billion mobile phones in use in India, still there's the usage of financial payment modes on these mobile phones is less. What do you think is the main reason behind it? And secondly, how is Revfin's model helping in changing that?
So I think first of all there is a journey over here. First you bring in mobile phones, then then you start building on top of that. You have apps that are being built on top of that, and then those apps are being adopted initially in bigger cities, and then they start gradually moving into smaller towns as well. Right? So I think India is on that journey, and it will take some time. Honestly, I would have liked the adoption of financial services through digital to be much faster, but that has not been the case. And that's also because there's a lot of focus on big cities, and there's a lot of you can increase your user base very quickly in big cities. Right? So a lot of companies don't want to focus on smaller towns. But when we started, we were very clear we will not start with tier 1 cities. We are based in Delhi, but we don't do any work in Delhi. Right?
So what are your bases?
Yeah, so we started with UP and Bihar. Right? And UP and Bihar are our biggest markets. Right? In fact, 96% of our customers are in tier 2, tier 3 towns. Right? So we said we'll go the opposite way. We'll start building from smaller towns, because that's where a majority of the user base that we were looking at exists. Right, so I think from that perspective, obviously Revfin is causing a little bit of a change. It's still not big enough, but it's a start of a journey. And gradually, I would expect that other services also will penetrate into smaller towns, and then therefore you'll have a much higher adoption as well.
So what I have understood from this conversation is a lot of finance, a lot of tech, and obviously vehicles. Where do you put yourself in? Are you a tech guy? Are you a finance enthusiast, or do you love vehicles?
Well, actually all three, to be honest.
And if you had to maybe rank,
when you become an entrepreneur, you can no longer kind of pick and choose or become a specialist in something. You have to become a generalist, right? So you have to kind of strike the right balance between everything. So when I started out, I was more of I would say a financial kind of a person. But I realized that if you have to use tech, I have to get deep into tech as well. So tech is a skill that I gradually developed, even though I was an engineer, but never kind of worked on tech. So that's something I had to develop. Vehicles, I guess everybody loves.
What's your favorite vehicle?
I don't know what it is these days actually. Probably a Bentley. Any Bentley would do.
Okay, so you're, as you mentioned, so you're a finance guy using tech to finance electric loans, right? So now, as I mentioned, your startup is in the fintech sector, loaning to the electric vehicles, and now we know that the market in India for the electric vehicles is rising. So let's say what happens if the big banks in the market see what Revfin is doing as a very good opportunity, and they come into the same space. So what do you think would stand Revfin apart from all these competitors, and how much do you think is important for let's say startups to value their competition and be prepared for them to enter in time?
Yeah, so it's not a question of what if banks decide. The banks will decide to come into this sector, right? So they will come in, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And I'll come back to this point, but first I'll answer your question. What sets us apart? So I think there are three things that we've done that I believe are our core USPs. First is we are completely digital, right? And that's easier said than done, because everybody says, oh, it's easy enough to build an app, but actually it's not easy enough to build an app. You can build one, but to make sure it's effective, it lands on the ground, people are able to operate it, etc. It's very, very challenging. Right? So we have a completely digital onboarding process, and that means that for the kind of user that we are working with, even for them, they can download our app, apply for a loan, get a decision, all in under 15 minutes, right? And for that kind of a user to be able to get a decision that quick is actually quite revolutionary. And I believe it's not happened anywhere in the world. So we are the first ones who've done it.
It's directly opposite to what real banks do.
Yes, absolutely. So that's one. Second is the way we underwrite using psychometrics, biometrics, and all of those things. We embed telematics in all the vehicles. I think there's a beyond just having a digital play, there's also how you use that digital technology to make your decisions using all these unique, innovative techniques. And for that customer segment, it's very, very challenging to underwrite that segment, right? So I think what we've built is very, very difficult for anybody to just come and replicate. And that helps us to make quick decisions. It also helps us to make very effective decisions and also very consistent decisions. And then there's a third thing, which is ecosystem partnerships. I always say to everybody, what we are doing is not vehicle financing. What we are doing is ecosystem creation, because electric vehicles are in very early days today, right at the moment, and these products will take time to get established, to understand what the life of the product is, what the range of the product is, what the residual value of the product is. If you have to bring the vehicle back, will it get resold? Is there a secondary market for it? So all of these things are not established yet, as it is for ICE vehicles, right? So somebody like us who's financing, we have to think about all these aspects, because all these things are future risks for us, and we have to solve for those future risks. And how we do it is do that is through partnerships with multiple players in the ecosystem, whether it's OEMs, whether it's dealers, telematics providers, insurance providers, battery charging swapping providers, e-commerce companies, fleet operators. We've worked with all of them. We've stitched partnerships with all of them to both scale our operation but also to mitigate risks. Now, a traditional lending company or a bank, for them to think of that and to be able to execute on that is going to be extremely challenging. And also for them, the decision-making cycle is so long, and if they start building these partnerships, it's going to take them years to do it. So therefore, coming back to how I started, I think it's good if banks come in, and I sincerely believe that once they do come in, they will seek partners like us to basically get into this space. So I don't see them as competitors, I actually see them also as partners in the future. Yes.
So, okay, so I see that Revfin is doing something which nobody else is doing. So, do you have a similar approach when it comes to hiring? Is the hiring process something very different than what others do?
So, you are students, and I must tell you guys this: for an entrepreneur, the biggest challenge in the business is hiring talent, and it's finding the right talent is extremely difficult. And in such a large country, it's very, very difficult to find skilled people. And so I think, honestly speaking, when we think about hiring people, it really is very difficult to actually hire somebody. If you find the right kind of people, then being a startup, they don't necessarily want to join you, right? So that makes it even more challenging. So I think it's very, very difficult to hire people, to find people.
So what would you look in if, for example, a fresher comes to you today and they're looking to work at Revfin? What would be some things that you would particularly look at? And are you involved in the hiring process?
I'm generally involved in the entire hiring process. I actually do my own LinkedIn posts and all also, right? So I can directly look at. I actually scan all the CVs myself and things like that. So I think there are 2-3 things that are very critical. First, in keeping with our values, and generally as well, I really sincerely believe this, that whoever we hire has to be very high on ownership. We are a startup. We don't have hundreds of people doing the same job. We have one person doing one job. So if that person is not doing it right, then the entire organization fails. Right? So there's a lot of pressure, a lot of burden on everybody. Even the young people, freshers we hire, they're also one person doing one job, right? So there's a lot of responsibility on them, and obviously that's a great opportunity as well. But so we have to make sure that people we hire are very high on ownership, which means that they have to be able to take over the task, understand it, execute on it completely on their own with very minimal supervision. That's extremely important, right? I think for me, that's especially for freshers coming in, for me, that's the number one quality. Other things as well, again in keeping with our values, etc. I think those things are there: honesty, transparency, but also being very creative, agile in thinking, and so on and so forth. I think all those things are there. But I think if you talk about freshers, I think it's easy enough for them to learn all those things. But I think ownership is a trait that you can't necessarily teach somebody. That has to be sort of more internal.
So, you spoke that you yourself post a lot on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn being a very great networking site. So in the startup world, is networking the top priority according to you, or where do you place networking?
Okay. So I think networking is,
and if LinkedIn is a great platform for the same.
Sure. So I think first of all, networking for anything is very important. I think networking helps you solve a lot of problems. You face a lot of issues as a startup, and if you know a lot of people, they can help you solve some of those problems. Having said that, you can build a startup without networking as well. Right? So I'm not a great networker. I don't talk to too many people. Right?
Thank you so much for talking.
Yeah. So. So you can build your startup or do anything without networking as well. But if you have networking, if you have good networking, that obviously helps and solves your problems much faster as well, and probably in a more effective manner. I think talking about LinkedIn, I think LinkedIn is a great platform. What I find is interesting is that the kind of content people post on LinkedIn is generally very, very good. And you'll also find a lot of people are very responsive on LinkedIn. Right? So as an example, if you message me on Facebook, I probably won't respond, but if you message me on LinkedIn, I'll definitely respond because I look at all my messages on LinkedIn. Right? So I think because it's a professional network, everybody is in touch for a professional reason. And I guess that's how you guys connected with us as well, right? So I think LinkedIn is a great platform for professional networking and for connecting with people. And to students, I would just say one thing: you should use LinkedIn a lot. Get in touch with people. Because people are reading those messages and they're most likely going to respond.
So, how do you, as a founder, interpret, let's say, human motivation in order to determine what will people pay for? So, let's say you have a customer. So, how do you determine their motivation to pay for your services?
I think you have to think about whatever service or product you offer to them. What is the total value proposition for them? Is that product or service adding any value to their lives, right? And you have to be able to assess that, and that value can be in multiple different ways. In our case, because we provide a loan to people for a commercial vehicle, it's very clear that there are two kind of things that come up. One is that customer or that user does not get a loan from anywhere else, so I'm giving them a loan, so that's a value add. The second thing is, with the loan that I give them, they're able to buy an asset which helps them generate income, and not just income. Most of our users get about 2.5 times of income that they were compared to what they were previously getting, right? So there's a huge value add. Now the question is, there are two value adds. One is more tangible in terms of money, and the other one is more sort of it's just, I guess it's not very tangible, but there's a great feeling attached to it that somebody has given me, somebody has that confidence in me and given me that product. Now, so I know that with both those things, there is a value add, and then therefore with that value add, you can also price your product. Now the question is, how do you price your product, right? Okay, I'll probably try to explain it in loan term. I always say that your loan installment should not be greater than 25% of a customer's earning. Okay, so your monthly installment should not be greater than that. That's your starting point. Now the question is, if that is your starting point, then all the earning that you have to make within that, and then you have to work backwards to see, are you then able to make enough money with that, and how much, for how long should the loan be, what should be the quantum of the loan for you to be able to make money with that sort of a cap on what you can make out of the customer. For certain consumer brands, a very catchy brand name becomes very, very important. And if it also tells what they do, it's even better. It's always better to base it from market dynamics.